Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Language Learning Center. We're very happy today to have Dr. Kathy McKnight presenting on what she has learned about team-based learning. So that's really my introduction. So go ahead, Kathy.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Thank you. So thanks to Pam Castaldi for this wonderful revisioning of these classrooms in the social labs. I teach in Lab 1 all the time, and I absolutely love teaching there. And so what I'm going to do today is not a study based on methodological research. I'm going to share some of the ways that I use that lab, which is, you can do something very similar in here as well. And what I want to do is just share some ideas about how to use the lab and how to use it specifically with teams. So these group tables are wonderful for team work. And I need to mention Julie Sykes as well for inspiring me to go a little more techie than I ever would have on my own. So, here, what I want to try to answer for you is some ideas about how might I use the LLC learning labs, social learning labs for a literature class. Could also go for a culture class. And how can teams promote active learning in a literature class? So, team-based learning and the flipped classroom. I hope you're a bit disoriented there because it's a paradigm switch. So the idea of teams is, and I'm going to quote from Michael Sweet, who's one of the founders of the TBL, team-based learning movement, and I learned about TBL through OSET, our own office on effective teaching here. It is a special form of collaborative learning using a specific sequence of individual work, group work, and immediate feedback to create a motivational framework in which students increasingly hold each other accountable for coming to class prepared and contributing to discussion. Jim Sibley and Sophie Spindanoff talk about this is a way to shift course goals, from knowledge to applying that knowledge. You shift from being the sage on the stage to being the guide at the side. They're nice keywords there. And students become more active, and when learning is more active, learning is deeper and more lasting. So you have to get students to study before class so that they can come and work in teams. So why teams? Teams are not just groups. And whenever you ask your students, what is your experience with group learning, their faces fall because it always is a matter of depending on those who are motivated to work. So teams are structured. They are groups that last the entire semester so that the students get to know each other's strengths and weaknesses and learn how to draw on the diversity of the team. They are also, there is a structure in TBL to make you accountable both for your individual production as well as the group production. So in the teams, you only get to enjoy the benefits of the team grade if you yourself and your individual grade get at least a C in the class. And then your teammates also evaluate you in a confidential way. And I found that that works really well, that they take it seriously and do a good job of it. So, what team-based learning and applying concepts in class does is to emphasize the higher range of cognitive activities, right? So instead of doing the understanding and remembering in class with the sage on the stage giving the talk, what students are doing is applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. So in my Colonial Latin American literature class, students use class time to think about and discuss the historical context, to analyze the literary texts in relation to the historical context, to take theoretical concepts and apply them to the texts, and also I'm going to give you a glimpse into an interactive mobile place-based learning game that they have worked on creating. So then how do you hold students accountable for doing the understanding and the remembering, the knowledge and the comprehension at home? You're going to get a little experience of this. You all, I assume, have a wonderful knowledge of and preparation in Albuquerque and New Mexico colonial history, so we're going to do a little individual readiness assessment process to see if you are ready to apply the knowledge that you have acquired. basically we have individual tests and then team tests to make sure that students are accountable. And these individual tests are tests on the table of contents, not in the index. That is, they are big concepts, big ideas, not the minute details. I also have, I emphasize metacognitive strategies in class. I give my students some means and guidance on how to do reading, note-taking outside of class, and I give them in Blackboard Learn a platform for some journaling and note-taking that is part of their grade to also hold them responsible. So let me give you some ideas about what happens in my class. So in applying knowledge, what might be an example of what I would do in my Colonial Latin American Literature class for students to apply the knowledge? For example, I might ask them, after reading Matthew Restall and Chris Lane's Latin America and Colonial Times, which two of these key terms together would best explain the incomplete conquest, the idea that Restall and Lane propose of the incomplete conquest. So they've done the reading and they have to be able to define the terms. It's a complex task, and then they have to be able to take those terms and apply it to talking about the big ideas in the text. And so they're making that knowledge theirs. And what I want to emphasize is that then class time is not me explaining these things, but them in groups talking about them and me giving feedback to them. Another activity we have done is in analyzing the text, we have read Juana Manuela Gorriti's The Executioner's Daughter, 19th century romantic story placed in Buenos Aires. It's a female writer writing about the violence that follows the independence, and she puts a female protagonist in her story. So we've got two women, we've talked about gender. Gender is one of the concepts. They have read about the historical context, and I say, so, how does Gorriti, as a writer, respond to the violence in Argentina? And how does Clemencia, her protagonist, respond to the political turmoil? And compare those two and come up with a thesis statement. So they use the Huddle-Boards, which you're going to use hopefully if we have time today, and they do this very complex analysis and come up with a simple thesis statement that compares those two and takes gender into account. Evaluating. So evaluating is another higher order skill, and we do this a lot to look at students' work. So maybe in a colonial literature class, and this is an example from my graduate class, and we didn't do this exercise, but I've done this kind of an exercise with other classes. So the students might outline how two different poets create a Creole identity. And then we might put all of the whiteboards, all of the Huddle-Boards up, and the teams visit the Huddle-Boards and choose, apart from their own group's team, they can't vote for their own group, which board best represents it. So they're evaluating the presentation of knowledge and understanding, and then they have to defend why. The teams defend why is this the best choice. And then creation, and I'm going to give you more of a sense at the end of the class what this was about, but creating is a very complex way to think, and my students have put together a place-based mobile game in which they are simulating visits from the colonial time and from the early Republican time to our campus and trying to see our campus through the eyes of those colonial people to create an empathic vision, so to really get inside the writer's mind well enough to be able to understand what matters to them, and using the main concepts of the course, which might be transculturation, identity construction, gender, political narrative, to use those concepts to create a game that then can be played by others to get inside this jump of this relationship between the past and the present, how the past would see the present, what relationship, and how does the present come out of the past, because the students tend to explain to these colonial visitors, well, in your time, this is how racial relations were, but things have changed, and in our time, this is how they are. So that it involves a lot of thought. So let's give some of these ideas a try. So like I said, I wasn't able to give you a homework assignment, so I just assume that you have a certain knowledge base. And you will find on your table a team folder. And you'll open that team folder and take out the individual readiness assessment test distributed. Just this, nothing else. And what I want you to do is mark your answers in 2 places. I want you to read the 3 questions and choose the best answer and mark it. And then down below on the fill in the dots, you're going to do that as well. And I will give you 5 minutes. As soon as one team is fully finished, you may have an additional 2 minutes. How fast can you read and recall, but how well did you understand the material and how well have you retained it? So this is the first step in a readiness assurance process. We've got to be sure that you're ready to work with and apply and analyze and evaluate and create with this information. And you've just taken the individual readiness assessment test so that I can be sure that you're not depending on your teammates to do this for you. So what happens is you come into the room, and first of all, you're motivated because you know there's going to be a readiness assurance process today, and you've read well and you've prepared questions, and we actually have about 5-10 minutes to answer your questions, and the questions, of course, can't be, so what did Restall and Lane say about the unfinished conquest? But it's clarification of confusions, okay? And then we go to the individual test, and everyone does it by themselves. I give them an answer sheet that's like what you see at the bottom, and then I have them handed in, and I quickly grade them all. And while they're doing the team test, which is the next step, and then I can give them immediate feedback about how well they read themselves. After the individual test, there's the team test, and you're going to do this now, but I want you to be focusing on the dynamics of the team test. What the team test does is, first of all, get students to teach each other and to get them into the habit of being able to teach each other. Also, you know, as teachers, that if you have to teach something, you know it a lot better. And so if the students are coming in knowing they're going to have to do some teaching with each other, there's an ideal that they will be a little bit more motivated on that. Also, you are going to get immediate feedback on whether you were right or wrong in your team's choice of answers. And in that immediate feedback, you're also going to get feedback about how well your team is doing talking to each other. So that you're going to realize that actually the quiet person in the corner knew the answer to the first question, and you didn't ask him. And you all got it wrong because of that, and so you're going to now know to go to him. Or you're going to know that everyone followed the leader and just said, oh yes, we know you're right, and didn't question him. And so you're going to get immediate feedback that says, no, he didn't have the right answer. I'm saying this to Damian because I know he will take it as a joke. And you will then know to question him, and you'll begin to think more critically. And this whole process of the team readiness assessment test will help the group learn how to work together and also cohere a little better. So I want you to think about that dynamic as you do this. And you're going to find in your folder a waxed covered if-at sheet, which is if-at is immediate feedback something or other test. And you're going to discuss your answers and teach each other and choose together, and then as soon as you've decided what the answer is, someone's going to sacrifice a fingernail or a quarter and take a wax off, and then you're going to go on. Okay, so go ahead and give this a try.
The reason why this one is wrong.
I just see solo porque yo sé que porque participo
Different members of the group have also had different reading experiences. Each of you has had a different experience reading Albuquerque's history and New Mexico's history. And you come together and you also have different experience of how to attack problems like this, and you come together and do this together. So after the team, after the tRAT, then there are appeals because I'm not perfect. So sometimes I write bad questions. Or sometimes the text that we're working with is ambiguous. And so the team can get together and actually appeal, and if they have a strong argument and they all sign on, they can get some value out of it. There's also a discussion and a mini lecture, but now everyone's motivated because now you have some investment in having answered these questions. So I understand that some teams don't like my question 3.
Yeah.
So if you read it very quick, and I'm just going to go through this quickly. This is not how I do it in class. In class, I would have the teams actually contribute. But there is a Native American perspective in this installation, and it is that spiral that's there. And I don't know, I can't talk about it, I'm not an expert on this, but there is a Native American perspective. It does not exclude, so B doesn't work because other perspectives are not entirely excluded. It does celebrate the conquistadors, so 3 is not an option, and it's not inside the Albuquerque Museum, so 4 is not, so D is not an option. Okay. But that also brings out you can do some arguing about whether, well, does this spiral actually constitute about a perspective that's open and accessible to everyone who comes and sees it, but now the students are invested in that discussion. So this is the readiness assurance process to make sure that all of that background, what I use it for in my class is to cover historical arguments that will be relevant to then literary analysis and concepts. So when I teach the Introduction to Literature course, the RAPs are all about metonymy and synecdoche and metaphor and point of view and things like that. Okay. So we did that. And now we're going to apply all of that knowledge. And I want you to give this a try, at least for a few minutes too, partly to see the dynamic, but also partly to see ways of using the resources in these social classrooms. So I love the Huddle-Boards because Huddle-Boards are a way for the students to stay at their table with all of their resources, and I use a classroom where there are at least 3 laptops on every huddle, on every space, social space, so that they can be looking up information and they can be consulting their text. Everything's laid out there, they're calm, they can think, and have the Huddle-Board right at the team and then write things on it. And what you're going to do in this exercise is to apply the concept of decolonization of knowledge. So, and decolonization of the gaze. So we have 2 visions of the colonial past, right? Here is the Cuarto Centenario, and here is Cultural Crossroads of the Americas from 1996, which is on our campus. And you will have studied already the concept of decolonizing the gaze, and that is that during colonial movements, colonial developments, the colonizers tend to stereotype, romanticize, and objectify those whom they colonize and who they've conquered, and they portray them as inferior. So an action of decolonizing the gaze would be when you are questioning that representation, when you are including perspectives of the colonized peoples, and when you are inviting the viewer to see that history and the relationships between colonizer and colonized in a different way. So your question as a group is take 5 minutes to discuss the 2 sets of pictures which you have in your team folders, and here, just imagine we're in the other classroom and everyone has a laptop in front of them and you're on Blackboard Learn, and it's not Thursday morning, the 26th of September, when Blackboard Learn was inaccessible. So everyone has a view of these pictures right up close, and you didn't have to make expensive photocopies and all the rest, right? So take 5 minutes to discuss the image and write your notes on the Huddle-Board. You're going to make a specific choice. You're going to choose. And with class, I would usually have a choice of 4, not a choice of just 2. But I wanted to make this a simplified exercise. Choose which of these is better at decolonizing the gaze. And then write your answer on the Huddle-Board where no one else in the other teams can see you working. And write a few notes about why. Defend yourself. So you have marcadores on the tables. Everyone send someone to get a Huddle-Board. And 5 minutes. You would usually I would usually allow a class to have 45 minutes or even an hour.
And you can only really take it and see it if you're like one view of it. So you might not even choose it or not know if it's
I write my bike here.
But don't they have stereotypical?
What actually they don't look that different. If you look at
Yeah, I think you're
How it was before. This is the games of the Spanish. Looking at them, creating cities, having a vision of the world that is not
And then romanticize it out.
To do this, but I'm going to ask you now to actually just make your choice and start writing some things.
Okay, so this one that
Digamos.
this one.
Yeah, I like this.
That's where it's questions. And if you can write them so we can send them, that'd be great. Hang up your board. Send someone to hang up your board. On the other.
Oh, I see.
So let's see. Crossroads, Centenario, Crossroads. Okay. So usually then what you have is a difference, and if we had more choices, there would be even more difference. And you see, it wasn't at all obvious. There were pros and cons on both sides. Debate each other, and the debate's motivated. I know often I used to, and I've seen other instructors too, divide up a set of questions so that this team does questions 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, but then they're not as motivated to listen to each other. If you're all answering the same complex question with a relatively easy way to present the answer, that is, there was a lot of discussion, but you can put a few short phrases to represent your answer, then you can get your teams engaged in debating each other, and they'll listen to each other, and you can work on things like projection. I always tell them, Pam, can you speak loud enough that Damian can hear you across the room, that kind of thing. So one way would be a verbal presentation. Another way would be, again, you could have teams go around and critique and actually write critiques on the boards. And then, of course, since everyone carries a mobile phone, the teams can photograph the boards and keep them in Blackboard Learn in their own areas, or I can put them up and I don't have to go. I used to take the newsprint and go back to my office and type it up, or get students to type it up, but we can have a record of the discussion then, and I try to emphasize that it's important. What you say in class is a valuable part of what you're going to be developing throughout the course, so let's remember it. So then these boards help us do that as well. Okay, so let's go on. What's next? So these are ways of then bringing together, either teams circulate and critiqued. They might select the most well-developed or most convincing argument other than their own, or they might debate together. So let me just show you. I want to turn now from the kind of team-building activities I do to a little bit more about how I use the social classrooms, and primarily what access to laptops in class allows me to do. So, what are some of the in-class uses other than checking email and Facebook? I have for one thing, I've been setting up a Google Docs area for collaborative work. I wish Blackboard Learn would get collaborative spaces inside it. There are dialogue, discussion spaces, but not spaces where everyone can get onto the same document and work on it together to develop ideas. And so in Blackboard, I have a link to Google Docs. And what I found my students, half of my students love all of this technology and the other half hate it or are nervous about it. So I found that with Google Docs, what I've been doing this semester is using the unlisted number way of doing things. That is, you can choose privacy settings and you can choose to have a link that you can only see the documents if you have the link. So then I put that specific link into Learn, and this is the link for Team 1. And this is this year's work, and they have a shared bibliography that they're putting together to start working on this mobile place-based game. They have, so this was, I guess they actually created their own extra space there. There's some instruction. There's something I'll show another screen of, but we had a paraphrasing exercise, and they can get in and edit together to show how to teach each other how to paraphrase without plagiarizing. Here's a place to find, in class, they quickly got onto Gale Virtual Reference Library from UNM Libraries, found some basic tertiary sources on their authors, and then put the bibliography in there so that everyone in the team could go home and consult those resources. This is where they're creating elements of their game, and here's where one of their parts of organizing the game. What themes would they look at with there's a group storage area is one thing that they can access in class. Here's an example of one of the bibliographies that they're starting. This was the paraphrase exercise. I had them at home copy a segment from one of the sources that they were going to use this is each individual work. And if you can recognize this is Blackboard Learn's journal area. So they copied it and then they paraphrased it. And we talked about why would you want to learn how to paraphrase, how important that is in academic writing. And they had to read something about paraphrasing. And then in class, they did this in the public. I had put a public setting on this, and so they could look at each other's in pairs and in the group and critique that. I've encouraged them to use this as a note-taking space, so they have team blogs that they can work on, and they can also use these as places to report. If we have, instead of going around, to look at Huddle-Boards, they could read something online. And then in the construction of this place-based mobile game, they're using access to the computer all the time and putting things together. So I wanted to finish up today by showing you a little bit about what this game is about. And for me, the jury's still out on this game. Last year when we did it, the students really enjoyed the kind of bonding that happened. I had a sense that their thought process as they were building the game was complex. I've been underwhelmed by the results, but I think I was asking them to do something very, very complicated and difficult. So I'm going to talk you through it a little bit. Again, this is Julie Sykes and also Chris Holden from Honors, who they came to me in the middle of the semester and said, hey, you want to create a game, a place-based mobile game in your Colonial class? I said, what? So we thought about it a while, and they want to study whether mobile devices, game design, local, place, and colonial literature can be used together to produce opportunities for students to deepen their understanding and use of a second language. I'm thinking kind of deepen their understanding and engagement with these colonial texts. They wanted to look at, can the social features of this design, so the actual teamwork component, increase teamwork ability of the students. They want to look at, can this format of storytelling, the storytelling that happens in the game, increase the imagination that the students recruit in relation to language production and second language acquisition. And I want to know if that imagination can somehow enhance their study of colonial literature and history. And then I want to look at whether this activity can help students create a meaningful link between their lives here in Albuquerque, and what a better place. I couldn't do this as well in Iowa, right, where I used to teach, and the course content. So, what is the game? The authors we studied, as I mentioned before, visit the campus. So I had the students go around the campus thinking about the authors we've been reading, and what would catch their attention, and what would they be interested in, and what questions would they have about it, and then how can you, knowing something about their reality, reach across that divide. So I'm really wanting them to try to develop an empathic vision, and I'm really wanting them to work on cultural communication and cross-cultural communication. I'm thinking that this game, while it's not exactly like preparing to go to Spain or Mexico, has some of the elements in that. So they set up what you do in this game, and its ARIS platform is a platform that's been developed for educational purposes. You develop a game so that you have a map, and if you recognize, this is where we are right now, actually. Here's Ortega, here's the library, and you can see the satellite view or you can see a street view. And you create encounters with these visitors from the past. And then when you play the game, you walk around, and as you approach the site, the notebook, something pops up on screen. So one of the examples is La Unión. So this is the mural that you were asked about on the assessment process. And you see some images that the students have taken. And then after the images, you see a little conversation. And in this conversation, when I had them do this part I wasn't especially happy about. It didn't seem to, it was tough to do this. The first part of playing the game was going to be let's just say it's a visitor, and let's figure out which visitor of the authors we've read would be interested in this area and ask these questions. So then they had to choose which one it was. That part didn't work out so well because it was hard to make a distinction between all of these authors. So if anyone doesn't read Spanish, the visitor says, so what do these murals mean? It looks like they're about Spaniards, mestizos, and Indians. Are they still separate groups? But here it looks like there's a good relationship among them. And then the student guide responds and says, this mural represents the union of cultures. Today, the majority of people get along and understand cultural differences that exist. All cultures contribute a different idea, creating the mixture. Okay, this is the student's response. This is not my ideology. So then, who's the visitor? And in this case, it was Garcilaso de la Vega. Inca Garcilaso de la Vega. And then, some of the students just did audio. This group ended up doing video as well. And you're not going to be able to hear very well, but we'll play them. What happened then was they were supposed to create two responses from them to the visitor from the past, and the players would then have to choose which one does a better job of understanding the visitor and speaking to the visitor's worldview. So, and I'll read my translation of these after you listen. So I actually didn't try to incorporate it anymore. Just
La verdad no entiendo por qué ahora se mezcla tanto la gente, no sé, se llevan muy bien, no comprendo. Hay muchas diferencias entre todas las personas.
Yo creo que es algo bien absurdo, ya que todos tenemos diferentes puntos de vista, hasta la forma que vestimos, el tipo de comida que utilizamos, la forma que hablamos, todo diferente. So, yo entiendo por qué están tocados mal.
So what she said was, really, I don't know now why people mix with each other so much. I just don't know why they get along. No, I don't get it. There's so many differences between everyone. And the man says, I think it's absurd since we all have different points of view. Even the way we dress, the type of food we eat, the way we talk, it's all different. I just don't know why it's so common today. And then
Hoy en día se puede ver más el proceso de la transculturación a través de las mezclas de culturas. Lo vemos más hoy en día porque toda la gente entiende las diferencias que existen entre ellos. Todos entienden que cada cultura aporta una parte diferente, aparte de la religión, aparte de la...
También con el pasar del tiempo creo que es algo más normalmente visto por personas. O el aprender otra cultura nos hace, por ejemplo, aprender acerca de otros lugares, otros países y personas.
So they were working, each group had to work with one of the major concepts, and this concept was transculturation that they were working with. And here in the second choice, the woman says, today one can see the process of transculturation through the mixing of cultures. We see it today because everyone understands the differences that exist between them. Everyone understands that each culture contributes something different, religion, literature. And the man says also, as time passes, I think that people see it as more normal to learn from another culture makes us learn about other places, countries, and people. So they're trying to make this step between the present and the past. And like I said, I thought the discussions and creating were fabulous, and the end result is fun. It addresses some issues. I'm going to see this year whether I can get them to push even a little deeper. So then when you play it, you're supposed to pick it. I had the class play the game during exam week and write in they had to, if they really liked how the place was constructed, they could like it, and then they also had to put comments here about which one they chose. And of course that was supposed to be the better response in terms of reaching across and communicating. So I hope I've given you some idea about how you might use these spaces and maybe motivated you to think about teams. Doing team-based learning in a very successful way can take a lot of investment in structuring your class, but it can also pay out a lot. So does anyone have any questions or comments that you'd like to make? Andy?
I know you worked a lot with this in your literature courses, and those are all upper level classes. How can we incorporate this into like our lower level Spanish classes?
That I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
And but I think probably at the second year level there would be ways. Now at the first year level there'll still be some things, but I don't know if you could do it sustainedly through I just haven't thought it through. You have to have a base kind of a content that then you apply, but you could use it in terms of selecting what is a more expressive way of saying thing, that kind of thing.
Do you know the date?
October 16th.
So on October 16th, I'm going to be doing a presentation here on how I use the Huddle-Boards and this interactive approach with my one-on-one class.
Okay.
Where
So-
they go and write, and they go and answer questions, create dialogue, creating little stories about themselves. And
So I
family.
absolutely, if I were teaching, and when I did teach basic language, I always did group work. My question would be the structured team method,
that's not as
but great.
possible, but-
So October 16th, what time?
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock.
What day is that?
Tuesday?
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday works.
Yeah.
We'll send out information on that.
Any other questions, comments?
On that map game, did everybody have to have a phone?
Excellent question. Thanks to the reading, the lab, there are iPods here.
Oh, okay.
So what I do is I send my list of students. I actually was surprised this year. I think maybe 3 students did not have an Apple device, but there are enough iPods for one class, or maybe 2 at a time. I don't know. To
We have
have
40.
40. So one
So
or
when
2
you walk
classes.
by that spot, it pops up on your
Mhm.
iPod that.
Mhm.
Oh,
So if you have an Apple device, go to don't download ARIS, just ARIS, or and there are a number of games on campus you could play to check out. And I'm asking my class to play some of those games to get a sense of what you can do with it. And Chris Holden, who's in honors, has a lot of those games are games his students have developed. Julie?
If 1 or 2 or a group of students obviously haven't prepared,
Mm-hmm.
and in an environment like this, how do you deal with that as an educator?
The team motivation, the team gets graded as a team. And the team members are motivated to push each other. It's not going to work 100% of the time. But I don't think, you can lead a horse to water. I think they pay the consequence, and the consequence is a lower grade. And you make your teams large enough so that you can have 1 or 2 slackers and the team still can function really well.
About how many folks on a team?
5 to 7 is what the designers have decided works, and that's what I've been using. So I try to start with 7 so that when there are drops, it works. But I have also found, and I have the team members at midterm do an evaluation that doesn't count, and everyone gets their evaluation, and there's usually a notable increase in participation after that evaluation.
Kathy, how do you pick those teams?
They are picked randomly. I get the students to try to think about what would be assets for the work in this class, and I never pick the teams before the first day of the 3rd week because there's so much shuffling back and forth. And then they name the assets, and then I say identify which is your strongest asset, and I take the rarest asset and we start that and just number off so that we divide up the assets. And I used to make native speakers one of the assets, and right now at the advanced level there's so many native speakers that there's going to be enough in a group. So it's trying to, you think about majors are a good one. You want some scientists divided up, you want people who've lived abroad divided up, you want older people divided up, people who've had careers divided up, things like that. There is a great teambasedlearning.org gives you a lot of information.
So one of the things is like the environment really help. The round tables over Lab 1 are fantastic to do this. Have you have any difference when you work on tables like this?
I haven't ever worked on long tables, but I started team-based learning before these classrooms were around, and I've used certainly the individual desks that you push together, and the people who developed this are teaching in medicine and in business, and they work in lecture classrooms, and if you get on their site you can see this, and I think you have a link to that.
Yeah, on
the group work that works.
Yeah, there's links to that information.
And you can see that I noted, and they say it and I believe it because of what I've seen, when I did group work that wasn't structured with a reward system, that wasn't a team continuously throughout the semester, group work, people were sitting back and maybe participating not, and when I started introducing the structure, you notice the physical difference. The students are now leaning in to each other, they're getting closer to each other, and the physical setup can make it a lot easier, but it doesn't keep you from doing it. So I that's my favorite classroom. I love it, and I love the tables are not too big, so that you can they can hear each other really well, and even with 5 groups in a room, it works. But you don't have to have that structure. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for all of you who are